everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tension of Opposites. Where might I have been for the past 6 months? Have I been backpacking through Southeast Asia? Have I been at a new job? Did I run away? Did I get married? Did I move countries? The answer is no. Simply put, I've been at home for the past 6 months, which is actually quite a new thing for me. I've moved back in with my parents and I've been looking for a job. So you would imagine that with this extra time, I would have had more time to edit all the episodes that have been on the back burner for the longest time. Hello to you. 3 interviews that I still have to edit that I've recorded, I think, way over a year ago. Sorry. But this had to take precedence and I'm really excited to be recording this intro because I actually just finished interviewing the person that you will be listening to today. This is a very timely episode because I have been looking for a job for the past 6 months and I have not found one yet. And it's been a really weird moment. It's been a very isolating moment and definitely not something I would have expected to talk about or experience, at least not to this extent. And I think the added layer of doing it while I'm at home and most of my friends are actually living abroad and usually I am the person who's always abroad has been really weird and it messed up with my head a bit. But less than a month ago, I actually reconnected with a friend of mine and we've connected over this shared experience that we're going through right now. The last time we had met each other prior to this was 10 years ago, but we've been in contact all this time and we both are exactly in the same phase of life, having finished a master's at the same time. So it was really refreshing to have this conversation with someone that was going through it, because lately I just find myself having this conversation with people that don't really understand or it happened to them but a long time ago and they can't really relate to what I'm going through. And so I thought it would be really special to dedicate this episode to people who, like me, are in a season of waiting. Specifically, people who are looking for a job, maybe an entry-level job like I am, or potential recruiters if for whatever reason someone is, looking to hire. Here I am. And yeah, I really thought that I would be recording this after I've been through what I'm going through right now to be able to have a clearer perspective over this. But then I thought, no, I think it's much more valuable to be able to share the discomfort of this weird moment while I'm going through it and being able to have someone else who's going through the same thing and being able to do this on this format to me is really special. So I thought that this had to take precedence over the other things that will be coming, hopefully soon. And I hope that this will also be an opportunity to unblock myself because right now I'm feeling very stuck by other things and to be able to get this format up and running again. I really, really, really want to do it, I swear. So yeah, without further ado, I will leave you to the episode with my friend, Charlotte. So hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How are you feeling?
I'm good. We will talk about all the complicated feelings of being on the job hunt, but generally I'm good and looking forward to it.
How are you is objectively a very loaded question in these times, so I wanted to kind of explain a bit how we know each other because this has been a bit of a random reunion that we've had. So I did already a series on the year abroad. And so I had mentioned to them that as part of the year abroad thing, we end up, sometimes I call it a study trip, but that was absolutely not a study trip, the Hawaii portion of it. So we met in Hawaii, as one does at some point. And we met on, I think, one of the coolest trips I have ever done. I don't think I will ever be able to top the perfection of that time there. But yeah, so I was doing my year abroad in Arizona and you were doing yours in California, right? Yes.
In California, yes.
We did one amazing week together and then we actually managed to meet for spring break right after because my host dad was in the same area that you were in. So we got to meet and we haven't seen each other since. So that was 10 years ago. We've always been in contact on and off. And then we managed by complete chance to meet not even a month ago, 3 weeks ago. which was really random because I was going to Florence for a conference. I'm in Rome right now. I just see your Instagram stories and I'm like, what? What is she doing here? So we managed to meet. That was really nice. A bit of a random coincidence that I was there and you were there. How long have you been in Florence now?
So I've been here for a month, I think. Yes, a month. So I'm currently living here with my boyfriend because he's doing a fellowship
Mm-hmm.
in Florence, and I'm German. Maybe I should mention that. So yeah, I moved here with him for now, and then now I'm on the job search, so I'll see for how long I'll stay. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing, exploring Florence a little bit and trying to find a job in international affairs.
When we talked about it, we ended up just having a full-fledged conversation about how this season of life is and unemployment and whatnot. And so I thought it would be interesting to bring that to the forefront because it is something that eventually someone goes through. I think everyone I've had a conversation with has always told me, yes, I've been there, I understand, but it's really hard to find some sense of comfort when you're going through it because it has so many weird phases. Sometimes you're absolutely fine, you're enjoying it as you're doing, like you're making the most out of it and you're getting to do something that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Some other times it's harder. I didn't think it was going to affect me the way there was, but most importantly,
Right.
I didn't think it was going to last as much as it is
Hmm.
lasting because we're both currently in this situation. So I don't know. I thought it would be interesting to be able to have this conversation where we're still going through it rather than doing
Yes.
it afterwards. Because I mean, for sure, there's going to be an afterwards to this and we will be looking back to it. But this moment, it feels a bit COVID-ish times where you are stuck in this thing that you can't really control. It's outside of yourself. And then here we are 4 years later and you don't even remember what you did during COVID. So I feel like it will be a bit of that. And also because we've had a bit of a similar path. We're not exactly doing the same thing, but we definitely went towards a more international environment. And I think we did the
Yeah.
masters throughout the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think we both finished last summer, right? Yeah. I wanted to actually speak to that, what you just mentioned, the unemployment is, I think, or the job search. That's how I like to phrase it because it sounds more positive, but it's
Yeah, I agree.
effectively the same. But I think especially when you are in an environment, that was certainly the case with me in my master's studies, where you're generally told you're doing well, you're ambitious, you academically achieved. It sometimes can feel to be put on a pedestal by your professors, by just
Hmm.
the feeling you have because you're around so many other international people who speak all these languages and they have all these cool experiences and
Yeah.
they want to do all these great things. And then I think coming from that into nothingness, and then you're in this period where you're looking for something, and that just can feel very unexpectedly hard, I would say, because you just didn't think that would happen, or maybe you were kind of under the impression that you would achieve your master's degree and then you would power through from the moment you get your diploma. And of course, for me, I was a little bit prepared that it wouldn't be like that because in this field, it is very hard, and that's kind of the norm. There's just a lot of people, there's a lot of competition, but still, until you're in it, I think you're not really expecting it. So, yeah, it's an interesting experience for sure.
I guess the fact that it drags on then makes it really hard when it starts to crystallize in a way that you didn't expect.
Mhm.
But you think, okay, I'm going through it. It's a bit of a rough moment. And I think it's also very interesting because it's the first time that you find yourself doing something that you know is a bit uncomfortable, but you don't know when it's ending. I think that is the thing that really messes up with your head more than anything
Mhm.
else because you do expect that you're going to have low moments.
Yeah.
But I think it's the first time. So we're both 27, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I would dare to find anyone who's 27 who's like, everything is great, everything is fixed,
Yeah.
everything is done. I think it's the exact age to have some sort of crisis. For me, right now, I feel like everything is a bit of a mess and I really don't know anything about anything. But I think if we had done it earlier, the expectation would have been different. The things
Hmm.
that we would have found would have been very different. So I think it's also particular because we decided to do it like I'm not sure how it works with the bachelor's in Germany, but just conventionally a little later than what you would expect. Like, for example, in Italy, you tend to do the bachelor's and the master's immediately after. I went into the job force, if you can say it that way, earlier. And the way that I got into it was very chill. I had really not much expectation
Hmm.
about it because I didn't have a lot of experience. And I think it allowed me to just live things differently. And now that I'm at the end of the master's, I feel the desperation that I saw people older than me doing the same thing that I was doing, if that makes sense. So I think also
Right.
the age makes it a bit different. What made you choose to do the master's a little bit later?
Well, I think it just kind of ended up that way because, yeah, so I did my high school year abroad in, I think it was the 10th grade. And so then in Germany, I don't know how it was with you, but in Germany, you have to repeat the year then because what they do in the US as a high school year is not really equivalent to what you do in Germany. And you have to be able to really show that you learned everything you need to learn before you can graduate. So that already kind of set me 1 year back, but I don't really think of it like that because it was just kind of common that people did that. They went abroad and it didn't feel like, it was like a setback. It was more, I was just a little bit older, 1 year older than others. And then I started right away with studying law. I just kind of chose it because that was the only thing that I thought would be interesting back then. I liked it, but I was not really captivated. I wasn't really excited about it. For me, it was like the first time where I felt like I don't really see the point because I'm just not excited about it. I wanted to find something that was exciting to me.
Yeah.
And then I had this course. It was called State Organization Law, I guess. And it was very, everybody thought it was boring, but I thought it was so cool because it was about how the state functions, like what laws are there to organize the state, the institutions, their relationship to each other. And that's when I thought that I could be interested in maybe political science. And that's when I decided to switch. So then I applied to a new university, but then I really liked it and I stuck with it. And that was 3 years, but everybody kind of needs a little bit longer. And then, of course, there was COVID at the end. So it was quite stressful for me. And I was not really so keen on, quickly finishing my bachelor's and then moving on to the next thing because I had no idea if that would even be possible. So
Yeah.
it was good that I could still be like have the student status until the end of 2021. Yeah, so I really became interested in wanting to also work internationally in some capacity. And then, yeah, I decided that I wanted to study international relations because that just kind of felt like the next step.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up then choosing my master's international relations and diplomacy. And that was a really cool experience. I really enjoyed it. It was very difficult. Not so much in terms of the subject matter, it was just hard because it was so much. We had deadlines every week. It was very exhausting and
Yeah.
very stressful.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was
Was
kind
it
of,
very competitive in your environment, in your master's?
I would say yes and no. On one hand, I think people were, they would help each other out. And I think there's been years where it hasn't been like that. I think there's been more competitive years. And also for me, I think I've always kind of been good at just focusing on myself. So I was never really too worried about other people and what they were doing. But of course, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and you still see other people who are doing great things, and it kind of pushes you, right? It pushes you to be that more as well.
Mm-hmm.
That was challenging at times, I would say, but it was great. It was great.
It's definitely an interesting environment to be in, especially the Netherlands, especially international context. And I am sure it's completely different from the experience that I had personally. But just to give a bit of background on what I did. So I did my bachelor's in languages. And to be honest, I don't really think I'm a person that has a natural inclination to like studying in general. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I had knowledge of multiple languages. It's something I did in high school as well. So I thought it was like a safe bet, at least for my bachelor's,
Mhm.
as a good base upon which to start other things. And then I started working always through internships and traineeships. But there was a point, I will go more into detail in the future because I haven't talked about these things yet. But there was a point where I could have easily continued working in an international context. And then, to be honest, everything happened during COVID, and I felt a bit dissatisfied with what I was doing, because when you're younger, you definitely have this attitude of, yes, whatever works, because I don't really have experience, so everything is good and
Mhm.
it's a good thing. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, so this could be easily the rest of my life right now. And it feels weird. It feels a bit unsettling. I definitely knew that I didn't want to do any kind of master's after my bachelor's because I had no idea what to do. I hated that there was that pressure. I remember this clearly when I finished my bachelor's, literally in the same breath was, congratulations, what are you going to do for your master's? Immediately. And it's like,
Mhm.
dude, just give someone the joy to, you finish an achievement and it's something that you work 3 years of your life. Okay, maybe you half-assed it most of the way, but that's what you do at that age. But I really hated the fact that there was this expectation that especially in Italy, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty much everywhere, that it is literally just a piece of paper that needs to grant you access to your master's, the bachelor's. You
Mm.
can't just be content and find a job with a bachelor's. And so that I had a lot of resistance towards that in the beginning. And then when I was doing, then COVID happened and then I was working in the meantime. And it was in a very bureaucratic environment, international environment, but it felt very bubble-ish for me. And so I thought, okay, no, I definitely want to do something that's a bit more practical, that's a bit more hands-on. I'm interested in humanitarian work, but I have no idea how this works. And then there was a friend of mine who was doing the traineeship with me at the European institutions that told me about this master's that was a master's in humanitarian action specifically. And I knew a couple of people who did it. It was an Erasmus Mundus, so I could have gone to other places as well. I think it appealed to me a bit of everything. It's like, it's exactly what I want to do. It's in different countries. I feel like it's a bit of a move. And I think I use this sort of as a way out, because I knew that if I didn't do that, it would have never not made sense to leave that job. So for me, it was a bit of like, okay, now I can go. But my master's experience was, I think, very different from yours in the sense that I don't think it was just taken as seriously. It's been around for 30 years. It's quite known, but the actual specific work that we had to do and the assignments that we had to do, the feeling that I got was more of, okay, you're in a master's, so regardless, like you're wanting to study and they never would fail you. It's not like you don't do a good work, but objectively, the work that you're doing is always going to be quote unquote good enough. And the
Mhm.
thing that I found, I mean, there was a part of internship. I don't know if you had an internship to do with yours.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And then after that, there was a thesis. Like the thing that I found the most tedious and the most master-like was definitely the thesis part, which is when we were speaking the most towards the end of it. I
Mhm.
hate, like, it's months of just figuring out what to research, what to write, how to write it, how to present it. I hated that. Out like of all of them, I think that's the thing that I like the least because it's just not my environment at all. What were your expectations once you finished with it? Like, did you have the opportunity in terms of network to already know what was going to be your next step? Did people give you a bit of a prep before the end of it?
Yes and no. I wouldn't say toward the end, actually. I think so. I studied in The Hague. So that definitely helped. And I think my university helped connect people. There was a lot of opportunities in my master's program as well, whether, for example, diplomats or other practitioners from the field who would come in and do a lecture or who would share their experience. We also had negotiation training from actual mediators and negotiation experts, I guess you could say. So that was really cool and really helped a lot. So I think I definitely benefited from that much more than I did in Germany, because in Germany it's very business focused. And of course, we had to do an internship, and I did mine at the International Criminal Court, which is also situated in The Hague. So that definitely helped to, make connections and to learn from people who are older than me, who, already have a career or are even at the end of their career and that can give some advice. I think what maybe our university could have prepared us better for would be the process of, okay, how actually do you start working? It's very different to look for an internship that you do for a limited time
Yeah.
versus looking for an actual job. And for me, things have come in terms of the internship and in terms of the work experience that I gained before. It kind of happened. Like I felt like it was of course I did my best, but everything kind of lined up perfectly. So during my bachelor's, I started working for a politician at the German federal parliament. That was relatively straightforward. And of course, there's more internship opportunities, I would say, than actual jobs in terms of the job that is right for you, right? So I would be happy with a number of different internships, but I wouldn't be so happy with every job.
Yeah, because you're on a time crunch, and I don't know how it was for you, but for me, the internship was obviously unpaid, but I had my Erasmus scholarship, and that's how you managed to find it. Otherwise, I would have never found a paid internship.
Yeah, mine was also unpaid. So I continued working at the parliament during that time, during my internship, and I had the internship. And I would then also had 2 months where there was an overlap where I had studies, internship, and my job. And that was really intense. The hardest months of my life, I think. I don't know. I had to be very structured. I was like not sleeping really. It was not great. But I knew that I had to do it if I wanted to, continue everything. So yeah, that was a bit wild. But yeah, unpaid internships are not so cool.
Because that was also another component of when I finished this. I was thinking, okay, now I'll just look for a job. That there's no way I'm going to do another internship. I have like 4 internships. Now I'm like, okay, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't think I really thought about it as much when I was going to finish. I thought, okay, I'll just finish this and then I'll just look for a job and I'll just start a new job. It really hadn't crossed my mind that it was going to be this complicated. And also the timing, I think, had a lot to do with it because we finished, I think, around the same time, so end of May. And then you want to have a well-deserved break. And then there's the summer.
Yes.
So basically, in the summer, you don't really care that much because you're like, okay, this is my last summer, my free summer before I start working. So you want to enjoy it. And then September comes around and then you're like, okay, but why are they not posting jobs? What is happening right now? I don't know about you, but they didn't start posting things I could objectively apply for in terms of requirements before, I think, the end of October, literally mid to end October.
Yeah, so I think some people had something lined up for them after their master's because they were looking for it, maybe in the spring or even the winter of during the studies still. But I think if you started looking after taking a well-deserved break and during the summer, I think it was very hard. I also decided against that because I honestly needed a break. I was very burned out. And I knew that if I wanted to do the next thing with enthusiasm and with, power and energy, I had to take a little bit of a rest. So I effectively started looking in October. But I honestly also think that was the time when there was actual jobs being posted. Before that, there was not really much.
I think it's interesting. One thing I wanted to ask you is a bit this dichotomy between how you feel that you are when you're inside of it, inside the masters and whatnot, and what happens when you're immediately out of it, like the idea of the label. Because even if now I'm not in my best shape, I'm willing to bet that even when I was a student, I wasn't in the best shape, but there was this sense of commonality. We were all surrounded by people that were going through the same thing that you're going through. You're doing 2 years of everyone in the same situation, the same vibe, probably even the same economic possibility, like we were all students, so we were living like students. So even if there wasn't really much going around, everyone was doing the same lifestyle. And as you said, like in your case specifically, but even in mine, they sort of made it feel like we handpicked a certain group of people and you are one of them. So you're one of, the best to come out of it. So you're doing this program. And I think there is a big sense of self-righteousness, also a bit of entitlement. I'm not meaning it in a disparaging way. Just, you're made to feel that you're doing something different, that you're doing something good, that you're pursuing an ambitious goal. And then there's this in between of you finishing and actually doing this last moment. The last leg of it is really you on your own of the whole study period. And then you finish, and it's what we call, I'm calling it the postmaster syndrome, where there's this really weird limbo of, I don't know what I don't even know what to tell people anymore. Like, I don't know what I'm doing right now because you're not like immediately looking for a job, but you just finished. but like you're not even really celebrating it maybe as much as you did when you were younger, and you have this in between.
Right.
What is happening now? I remember in the summer, I felt like I had too many emotions coming all over the place, and I was like, I have no clue what's happening from here on out.
What's interesting about the feeling is that while you're a student, you are very clear on your task, you're very clear on your role. You know
Hmm.
that, you're a student, so even if even if you feel like, I don't know, today I didn't manage to do anything, or I didn't write as much as I should have, or I don't know, didn't do well on this test or whatever it might be, you're still a student and that's your role and you identify with it.
Yeah.
And when you tell people, oh, I'm a student, they're like, oh, okay, so that's kind of her phase, the phase of her life right now. And it's very clear what that means, even if the day-to-day looks a little bit more obscure.
Hmm.
But yeah, you have a goal. So your goal is to get that diploma. And for me, yeah, I was very focused on that. And I identified a lot with being a student, with being, you know, educated and ambitious and being intelligent. And I wanted to be smart and I wanted to learn. And um, so I think what was difficult then coming out of it is that you don't have this, like you said, this community maybe of people around you. You have, of course, your peers are likely in a similar situation, but you don't see them every day. Everybody's kind of like, I don't know, maybe moving back to their parents, or if they, if they have some independence already, they can move out. But generally, you don't see what people do in their day-to-day lives. Whereas when I don't know, when we're going through the master's thesis, we could kind of vent to each other, would be in the library, and it would be the same environment. So that was making it easier to do the hard things. But when you're out of the university context, you're very much on your own. And I think it takes a lot of self-trust to, even if you don't see like immediate results with the job search, that you still kind of continue on the path and yet that you know where you want to go and that you trust that it is still that you're still doing the right thing, even if it feels like, oh, it's not working. I'm not getting enough interviews. I'm not getting, I haven't found a job yet. All of that feels like wrong and terrible, but still like you have to kind of accept that as part of the process. But I think that's something that you're not prepared for. So it's a very different thing. And I mean, not to say that, where we're not struggling within the masters, because even though, maybe teachers or professors or I don't know, the general vibe was like, oh, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're educated, you're doing a great thing.
Hmm.
Even if you were told that, you still had these moments of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or, comparing yourself with others. But still, you were told that you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And then you achieve that, and then you're like, okay, so now my life is starting with having this diploma. I can do what I was prepared for, find a job, really enter the workforce and do something. It doesn't work like that right away. I think at least it's at least not the common experience in the field of international affairs as a whole. So that of course is very difficult. But I think what helped me was at least that I was preparing myself for it.
Hmm.
And also because I was so exhausted, honestly, after the masters that I didn't have the need to have something right away. I was like, okay, I actually need a break and I actually need to focus on something else outside of university and outside of academia, because I also noticed in myself that I derived a lot of self-worth from being a student and like getting good grades. And I think I didn't put as much time and effort into other aspects of myself. I mean, I did have
Mm.
hobbies and all of these things and interests, but there was just not enough time to pursue these things. So focus on one thing, and then when that's gone, your identity crumbles a little bit. So now I think you have to really, in this period, it's very hard to rebuild that. And that's why I think we talked about this when we saw each other recently, that it's so important to have something else too, even if it's like a small hobby or activity, or do something for others that is not connected to like your professional goals, because otherwise everything is kind of get very sad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been there definitely. I mean, I still think that I dabble with it. Maybe now
Hmm.
I'm a bit more conscious about it, so I managed to deal with it a little bit better. But again, it's very on and off for me personally. But that's one thing that I don't really understand. So you put so much time and investment and money because of objectively the masters are also expensive. So there's a big
Hmm.
investment from many different aspects to do this thing. But then it really seems that once you're in an academic context, it is self-sustained within the academic context, but nobody really has a conversation of the after. Like for me, at
Hmm.
least, there was never a, okay, so what is the game plan from now on? I did a career development semester while I was doing my internship, and none of it was on that. Like they shared a
Yeah.
website with useful links for job search. They made us write our CV, they made us write a cover letter, they gave us feedback, and that was pretty much it. And if I were to look back on that now, I would have been, if I were the career development coach or whatnot, I would have been like, start looking for a job, at least start sending shit and start looking at stuff from the beginning of the next year, even if you're not then going to find a job maybe before September of this year. But at least start understanding, you have an Excel spreadsheet, you have a certain amount of websites, at least you know where to look once you start looking, because summer is the summer. It didn't even cross my mind to look for a job. I had some friends that were starting something immediately after, and I was very smug and I was like, oh God, I mean, poor you, give yourself a break, sort of thing, no? And now I'm like, really, I need to put my foot in my mouth because like that was, everyone did it in a different way.
Yeah.
And I really genuinely didn't understand what the rush was, as you were saying. I was like, okay, but there's a summer, just enjoy it a little bit and then we can start looking for something. It really
Mm.
never, ever, ever crossed my mind that I would be 6 months in, because right now if we start looking at when I realistically started looking for a job, we're 6 months in. And this is the situation. Like, I have not been contacted by anyone other than rejections until like the last week of February. And now it's already halfway through March. My God, why is time going by so fast? But it's just like now things are happening. But it's 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, who would have ever imagined that you would hear absolutely nothing for 6 months? And the thing is, I speak to people and people are like, no, no, that's normal. I looked for a year. I looked for 9 months. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Where were you? Where were we? How did I not know that you were going through that? So
Yeah.
that's another thing that I wanted to talk about. It's really interesting how it's a new experience, it feels like, but everyone has been through it, but nobody really talks about it. And I think it's hard to talk about it because it's really hard to express anything other than, I guess, a bit of desperation, a bit of sadness. I don't know. How did it
Mm.
work for you? At what point, so now we're basically after the summer, let's assume. At what point did it start feeling hard for you? Because I know that we have other people who are in the same situation, but like for me, I had some people already had a job. Some people started an internship and I was like, no, fuck that. I don't want to do an internship. And some people were looking like me, but in comparison, the people that I know that are looking are minimum compared to the ones who are quote unquote settled, as in like they found something for now. How was that experience for you?
So I think maybe it's starting for me now that I can feel that I'm sometimes maybe getting frustrated when I apply to a job and I'm like, oh, I think I really would have suited it and I don't even get like, an interview. So
Yeah.
that's certainly frustrating. I think generally so far I've been quite lucky that it didn't feel super bad because I think I was just so focused on, I think I was very honest with myself going into this. So I was prepared. My boyfriend actually, he does a lot of mentoring and he also works in this field. So he talks a lot about, finding your way into international affairs. And so he was like, no, you should definitely be prepared for at least 6 months. And that's already fast in this field. I mean,
Hmm.
if people from a different field are listening to this, it's probably quite wild to them, but it's just how it works because there's so much competition and it just moves very slowly. You have these very big institutions that take a year, not a year, but sometimes even 6 months to get back to you. So that's something I was very prepared for. So my focus was on, and still is, I try on the thing that I could do. So I'm trying to be structured. So I made like a spreadsheet where I put in all the dates, deadlines for the jobs. I research regularly, okay, what jobs are there, and then I kind of prioritize for myself, what do I want to apply to? And I try to set like a goal of how many applications I want to send within a week or something like that. That also differs because there's not always a lot of jobs. Sometimes there's more. And so I document that. And I don't know, it might be silly because of course, once you if you get an email back, you will see that, but still also to track it a little bit so I can show myself that I'm doing something. So I have a little spreadsheet where I can, document the applications that I sent, and then I also document if I got a rejection, if I got an interview, if there was no response, just to kind of feel a little bit more in control, and also to keep the focus more on myself and what I'm doing, because ultimately I'm dependent on somebody else inviting me or, doing
Yeah.
something. I can give them my application, but I can't do anything more. So I think that's what actually helped me. I'm a little bit lucky in this situation because I've been able to focus on that, but I can definitely feel that now it's starting to get more frustrating, especially when it's these jobs where you're like, no, I was clearly a right fit. And of course you're disappointed. So yeah, I can relate to that.
You're me 3 months ago, basically. Or a little bit wrong. Okay, no, I mean, that's really good. It's good that you had a support system and you had someone that sort of could mentally prepare you for that, because I definitely wasn't prepared for that. Also, because
Yeah.
I'm trying to work in the humanitarian field, I want to work in the migration field. And to be honest, I don't understand where this big competition comes from, because it's not exactly
Hmm.
something that people are like pining for, aiming to work on projects in different countries. It would be literally the equivalent of doing social work. No judgment
Right.
against it. I have no problem. But if, I cannot even find that. And how do you say, the sort of education you need to go through to become a registered social worker is different from what I did. So I just thought, okay,
Hmm.
I had a bit of the international institutional experience. Now I want to have something that's more hands-on, more practical, and it's not going anywhere. And I'm sure that recruiters maybe saw 20% of the applications I sent. I just know that. Like, I started that as well. I have my Excel spreadsheet. I write every week what I apply for. And in the beginning, I started doing the got called back, which basically never happened and got rejected, because I would put the rejection ones in red. And once like my Excel spreadsheet started bleeding with all these rejections, I was like, you know what? I don't think this is good for my mental health. So maybe I'll just stop writing them. It's fine. I
Hmm.
mean, I start writing down stuff, but I don't say who called me and who didn't, because
Right.
again, I really genuinely I feel so stupid now, but I'm not supposed to feel like that. But I genuinely thought, okay, I want to evaluate my options. I would like to do this, this, and that. I will be able to weigh what is the better thing compared to the other. And then just nothing. I just never heard back from people. And in the beginning, it
Hmm.
felt very normal. I had, a couple of friends who did internships, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's was something that I personally chose not to. Also, because it is so time consuming to look for jobs, to apply for jobs. And it's really annoying
Yeah.
that it's perceived as you're not doing anything. You're just wasting your time. It's like,
Right.
you have no idea how long it fucking takes to have to tailor cover letters every single time, finding stuff,
Yeah.
applying for them. It wastes so much more time, and you don't even have the time structure of a job, because you know that at a certain point you clock out. With this one, you always feel a bit guilty,
Right.
like you never really can
Hmm.
afford to clock out. And the thing of the labels, as you were saying, I think it's interesting, because when I was a student, insofar as I was a student, it just ended up being, oh, okay, like no one would ever question it more.
Hmm.
Instead, this has been a source of welcoming so much unsolicited advice that I did
Hmm.
not ask for in any way. And I think that's really chipped at my self confidence slowly, slowly, because I don't know, it's just a matter of not us being able to know how to be there for each other in uncomfortable moments. Because, I mean, this is objectively, as you said, we have no control over this. All we can do is
Hmm.
just apply and hope for the best. But I think it's very debilitating for me mentally, because I feel interrupted by everything outside of my power, other than trying to tailor my CV, aka, I mean, not lying, but you have to stay embellishing experiences that you've done, because we're still entry level phase. So, and they expect you to have 5 years of experience. Or I'm in a current interview process that I'm just doing for the sake of doing it, but they're just not paying me remotely enough to survive. Where I did a test last week and I have to do 2 interviews now. And this is for an internship. It's like they know that the people are overqualified and they're going to pay you nothing. And they know that you are probably going to accept it because you're not finding anything else. I just find the whole concept of it so absurd. And the biggest problem that I'm having right now is I don't know how to relate and how to be around people in a general chit-chatty conversation type thing. Obviously, my friends know what I'm going through. I have to distance myself a lot, and that makes me also very sad. But I think it's the day-to-day interactions with random people where I'm just saying, right now I'm just looking for a job. And they feel compelled to tell you, oh, but try this, but do that. But it's never anything that's really useful. Like to me, maybe it's because I'm in an insecure phase, but I always end up perceiving it as you're just telling me that what I've done until now is wrong. That's what it feels like to me. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not looking at the right thing or at the right page, or I haven't applied enough to this thing or that thing. That's how the response feels to me in a visceral way. And it's hard not to find a way to cope with that other than just removing myself from situations in which I have to be there and you have to tell your sob story. And I hate that people like look at me a bit with pity, because I can't do
Mm.
anything. I don't know. So that is, I
Yeah.
think, of the thing that I've had.
Well, I think that's it's probably a very shared experience in this field because I mean, of course, it's a bit weird when we put ourselves through like 6+ years of education and you put in all this time and effort to, get a master's. So it's a little bit like, where I think we're in the bubble of specialized, educated people, young people
Hmm.
who are like
Hmm.
very flexible, they're very mobile, so we could like work anywhere a little bit. It would make sense that you have a lot of different jobs to choose from. And
Exactly.
technically you do because,
Yeah.
we're flexible in that we're both, I think, looking in different countries. There's a larger pool of opportunities that we could that we're open to. But at the same time, it's just this field that moves incredibly slow and that there's not a lot of entry level positions. So I think for people who are not in this field, it seems a little bit like, okay, but she has a master's degree and she has some experience and she seems like a smart person who can, who can find a job. Why is it taking so long? Or why is it just not
Hmm.
happening for her yet? And I think that is a little bit the dissonance that people have. And then they're like, okay, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
Why would you, why would you put yourself through all this education if then in the end you're not really sure of what you're going to do? But I think that's where the fallacy lies because we are going to find something. I'm certain of that because there's very specific jobs that exist that are right for you and me and for other people in this field. There's a variety of jobs. There's so many different opportunities in so many different countries. It's just a
Hmm.
matter of time, and it is a matter of preparing yourself for, for the right opportunity. But of course, you also have to have resilience in the waiting time, and that's very difficult. And I think that's very, very difficult to explain to somebody who's not in this field because I don't know if you're in like finance or whatever, things might also sometimes be moving slow, but I think in general you'll be able to find a job. But
Hmm.
it's just a different field, I think.
Yeah, no, I've had that. And that was the funniest thing because in September, both me and my best friend were looking for a job. Like she had quit her job and she was just taking the summer off and she could afford to do that. So that was great. And then both of us naturally ended up in September. We're like, okay, now we actually have to start looking. And so we started together
Mhm.
and I was thinking, oh, how great, like we're besties. I had multiple people in my same situation. And then I kid you not, over the course of like a month, everyone found something. And I was like, oh my God, like my best friend, like her boyfriend, in a matter of like 2 or 3 weeks, they managed to find a job, relocate to a new place, start at the same date, and you're like, how is this happening? And then my other friend also found a job, and I was, that was really weird. But then again, she works in sales, like it's a completely
Yeah.
different, environment. It's much faster. It's different, but that is definitely something that I've noticed, that there's a dissonance from any normal person. And I'm not saying that like we're special or whatever, but we're inside this bubble. This bubble definitely is getting bigger. Like I know more and more people
Mhm.
that have been through the same thing that I'm going through. But from the outside perspective, there's definitely this thing of like, what is the point of you studying so much if then it's not conducive to you finding immediately a job? And I've definitely felt
Right.
that because then how do you say, the subtext seems like, how are you not getting it? Like, you technically are good, you're
Hmm.
smart. And everyone I talk to is like, but I don't get it, but you're smart, but you have a master's, but you're this, but you're that. And it doesn't really help in any way. Like, I don't know. If anything, I wish that this conversation can bring a bit more awareness as to how to approach the conversation for someone that is going through a sensitive moment, because already you're having all the self-doubt and possible. The stuff that I'm applying for is, again, secretarial positions at this point, like any sort of entry level thing, assistant positions. I'm really not aiming for
Hmm.
much, but you also do think this is ridiculous, because I could be aiming for much. Like, if I've done the education that I've done, and I do have work experience, and I do speak 6 languages, how is this still not enough to be able to be
Yeah.
in the competitive spot, because you're competing with people who have more experience than you do. And it's insane to
Yeah.
me. But also, you lead me to another point that I think is also interesting. I don't know, maybe you've had this sense of, I mean, I guess maybe even guilt in a sense, but the thing is, we could be having a job right now. Like, objectively,
Yes.
it's not a matter of we
Yes.
can't find a job. It's a matter of principle, I guess. And I don't know at what point it's okay, quote unquote, for me to continue trying and looking, because I mean, right now I'm living with my parents and it's okay.
Hmm.
I'm cutting it back. I'm tutoring. I'm not really doing other jobs in the meantime, but I do, I guess, have a bit of this feeling of like, how long can I continue this for? Like,
Yeah.
how long is it objectively enough? But then I'm also very sad and depressed, especially at specific moments. So there is also a part of me that thinks, if I'm just going to give up and just do another job, I think that will make me even more depressed. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
am struggling a bit with a sense of guilt in that sense, because I think I'm very privileged to even be in a position to be able to take the time and look for a job. But then at the same time, I also have this like, come on, I've worked this hard. Like, I can't not do what I want to do.
Hmm.
Like, it feels unfair that after all this investment, I'm not doing, not, I mean, at least in the field of what I wanted to do. Like, I don't think I'm asking for much.
Right.
But yes, I have a bit of a hard time.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think on one hand, you want to focus all your energy and time on trying to get that job that you really want to do. And that can, of course, we're flexible in some ways, but in general, like the topic, the field, but generally, of course, I have some expectations of where I would like to be in the future and what I would want to do now. But I think
Hmm.
what helps a little bit if you feel like this pressure to branch out a little bit and of course continue sending your applications to the jobs that you really really want to do, but also trying to maybe think about the connections of different fields and a little bit of a bigger chance of finding something or finding something more quickly. I think that's also a little bit it's a matter of time, obviously.
Yeah.
So if you have something already that you're working in where you have your money, you have independence, and then you can find for something and you're knowing, okay, this is not forever, this is for now, so that I can support myself and find something else. Yeah, it's difficult, but because of course you also don't want to, get into something now where you're like, oh, this is not what I want to do at all, but it is a job. And then you may be not so flexible when the right job aligns, right? When it comes up, because
Hmm.
you already have another commitment, and then it might be it takes some longer time to get out of. But yeah, so I get that it's difficult, but I guess I would not give up on where you want to go. I would maybe
Hmm.
just try to see it as it might take you longer, or you might have to, I don't know, take something first that's not really your thing in order
Hmm.
to get to that next point. But I also wouldn't give up because I generally think that if you're interested in something, if you're good at it, then that's probably also where you're going to have the biggest impact and where you want to be in the long term. So why not try to get where you want to be in the long term, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely do think that there's some sort of, I don't want to get too spiritual about this, but I do think that it is a matter of timing. Now that I see that stuff is moving, and again, I'm not at a phase where I have any possible leads where, like, oh God, I am in an interview process for something that I really want. But the sheer fact that now, over the course of what, 2 weeks, I've been
Hmm.
invited to interviews, plural, where I haven't heard anything for 6 months. I'm like, okay, definitely the timing is a component to this. If I could give an advice to anyone, maybe we'll get to our recommendations portions towards the end of this episode. But if I can give advice to anyone, it's like there's definitely time periods where it's better to look for a job and not. And I think we just looked at the worst time. Like the last quarter of the year is not when to look for a job because people are like finishing their budgets. For them, I remember in November they were telling me, because I mean now it's basically Christmas, so nobody's going to be posting stuff. And you're like, what? So yeah, the last quarter is just not the best timing. March is always, at least for me historically, has always been a month where a lot of things happen. So I do maybe think that sometimes it's just you're not meant to find something beforehand, regardless. Because I really do feel that there was so much resistance that was outside of me. I tried doing remote jobs. I tried setting up a Fiverr account. I tried tutoring and reaching out to different people. And you always have this feeling where something is leading to something else, and then it gets interrupted for whatever reason. So now I do energetically feel like it's heading towards somewhere different. So I think it's also a matter of understanding that sometimes you literally just can't control how something is evolving. Then of course people have different situations. Sometimes you need to cope and need to do what you need to do to be able to cope. But I don't know. It is giving me a little bit more of comfort knowing that it is a universal experience. I wish it were normalized a bit more. I wish people would talk about it a bit more. But then at the same time, I can't really judge them because it's really depressing. Like when people ask me, how are you? Or what's up with you? It makes me really sad not being able to give any updates. I'm like, same thing, so it feels debilitating. And I almost like hope that people don't text me or people don't ask me how I'm doing because what am I going to tell you? That I feel like shit? And then I hate when people either ignore it or they tell me, it's going to be great. Like, you don't know it. Don't tell me that. And at the same time, it really bothers me when people are like, yeah, that's shit. I'm like, no, you can't say that. I can say that. Like it's just a very sensitive moment overall. I don't think there's any one way to do it. But definitely, I am more and more convinced that if I'm going to find a job, it's through networking. It's not formally. Do you know that sometimes they post jobs that are not real jobs? Like sometimes companies post vacancies because they're legally obliged to post vacancies every
but
once
then
in
it's
a while,
already
but they're not.
filled.
Not well, yes, they're tailored vacancies as well, but some vacancies don't even exist. Like they do a whole post and the application and they're not even real. Like the bigger the company, the more likely this is to happen. And you're like, what the hell? I'm getting rejections now for stuff that I applied in November.
It takes a long while,
It is crazy. So it's really hard to keep your mental sanity through that, I feel.
It's a unique situation because it messes a little bit with your self-image, right? Like we talked about before, that you want to do something, right? You have things to offer. It just doesn't line up yet. So it's very, it's one thing to kind of reconcile that with yourself, but then of course to tell it to other people. And I've also had the experience where I was like, it's okay. Like I'm very fine. I really don't take it personally when I get a rejection. Of course, it's frustrating, but also, then it wasn't for me. And somebody from a former classmate of mine, he like knew that I had an interview a while back in January, and then he asked me about it. And that's where I'm like, if you're close friends, fine. But I think if you don't know somebody that well, it's just a little bit of a weird thing to like keep pushing somebody about something. I would just say that if you don't know them that well, if they have good news, they will come to you. So he asked me, so how, yeah, I hope you have good news from, that interview. And I was like, no, actually they chose somebody else, but it's okay. Wasn't the right fit. So that's that. I mean, they have their reasons. And then also I don't want to, that's, I think, a really important thing. You shouldn't get too attached to one job. You have to keep it moving. You have to keep sending applications. Because as long as you have a constant output, there's going to be something. If you don't put things out there, nobody's going to call you if you don't send your application, obviously. So it's important to not get attached to one thing. So I told him that. I was like, no, sorry. Yeah, it sucked, but that's how it is. And then he was like, oh, they're missing out. Like, they're so stupid. And I was like, I didn't respond because I didn't know what to say, because I was like, I mean, no, they're not. Like, I don't know their reasons. And also, there's no need to say something negative now about them, just in order to make me feel better. Like, you also have to of course it's frustrating, of course it's annoying, but it's really a little bit of a test of your resilience. And if I'm going to crumble, if somebody tells me, no, we don't have a job for you, then yeah, I'm going to have a hard time. You have to be able to face the reality, unfortunately, as well. And I think that's something to learn definitely through this process.
Sometimes it's acceptable, sometimes it's a bit uncomfortable, especially when I agree, it's like people in your masters, but you weren't really friends with them. Sometimes it feels like sort of quote unquote spying on you. They want to know where you're at.
They're
And
scanning.
that makes me feel really
You're
uncomfortable.
seeing them at, I don't know, 2 a.m. in the morning. They're visiting your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're like, "Hey, how are you doing?" It's like you would have never texted me. So what is up? But I wanted to ask you about that. How has it been this experience? Have you compared yourself to your master's peers? You have a good support system. Has it made you more comfortable or less uncomfortable? How has it been so far?
It's been okay. I think through the masters, I've noticed that even with internships and even though we're in the same program, people had their different interests, their different paths. So it already felt a little bit silly to compare because, everybody's doing something else. They're on a different path. So of course, you see on LinkedIn or somewhere else, you're like, oh, they have this new job and, they're doing something really cool or really interesting. And then you're like, oh, I wish I wish I had something like that. So yeah, no, honestly, yeah, of course, sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I had this but I always try to, notice that within myself, which is a natural feeling to have that you would like something else that somebody has that's cool, that's, yeah, just a great opportunity. But then I'm also happy for them, that they find something or that they found something that, yeah, moves them forward. I think with friends, I've not really compared myself to because you're just like kind of seeing somebody more as like a whole person with a whole different backstory. I think that's a little bit, you can easily compare yourself to somebody you don't know much about because you just compare yourself based on this one experience or this shared master's degree or whatever. But when it's with your friends, you kind of you see them maybe a little bit in a different light, and you're of course also more invested in in their success and like wanting them to wanting them to achieve whatever they want to achieve. But you also get a more direct insight into their experience, and I think a lot of my friends have also felt a little lost at this time, even if they had something. A friend of mine, she found a job quite quickly, but she wasn't maybe so happy with the job. So
Yeah.
she was also not really, super fulfilled. And she also didn't feel like this is something I could see myself doing for a long time.
Yeah.
So I also have kind of seen the downside, I guess, of doing something right away. Then she was also not really able to recover from the stressful time after thesis and the whole master's. So she, I think a lot of people who started working right away, at least some of my friends, they've struggled then with being sick quite a lot or something like that because they're just running on such low energy.
Yeah.
So that can also be very tough, where you have something and from my perspective, you were thinking, oh, it's going great for them. But maybe that is also a tough place to be in when you haven't really had that time to recover. It can also give you a little bit of hope, I think, with when you see your friends a friend of mine, she found a job, I think, quite early on. And it's a really cool job, and I'm really happy for her. And she also said that, she didn't expect it at all. And it happened so quickly. So I think that's also something to keep in mind. Things can change very fast. Sometimes it moves slow, but when you find something, it can also move very fast. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunities that you haven't thought about yet.
Yeah, that is something that I experience as well. So for me, as I said, I feel like I'm in a space where I don't really want to know what's going on with my friends, and I hate being in this space, to be honest. I hate not being in a space where I can be genuinely happy for my friends. I definitely am, but it's like I'm not actively seeking them out because I just don't want to know. I think I'm at a point where I'm feeling very insecure in my abilities because again, as part of the system, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine. who she's the only one in Rome that she's like going through the same thing that I'm going through. Well, she went through the same thing I'm going through because we're in the same field. And I like the way that she structured it because she's like, yes, but it's just we're framed because of the capitalist society. And it's like, it makes sense because it's not like I feel worthless as a person. I feel not valuable on the job market. That's how I'm feeling right now. That I don't really have anything different to offer, that I don't know the languages that I know well enough, that I don't have anything that puts me a step ahead compared to other people. And then when the average, normal person comes across my CV, they're like, wow, this is a really good CV. And I'm like, it doesn't seem like, because it's not tailored enough and it's two communications and I want to do operations. It's like this sort of situation.
We're kind of in a field where it seems like people have a lot to offer in terms of they know a lot of languages. They're very specialized.
Yeah.
So you would think, oh, that's a plus, but actually in this field, often it's just kind of the necessary requirements, necessary but not sufficient. Like having a master's degree, I used to think that would be like, a ticket into a really good job. But actually, when I did my internship, I asked my supervisor, I'm curious, like, why did you choose me? And he was like, yeah, I liked your practical experience in the parliament. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like,
nothing
okay.
to do with the master.
And then he was like, oh, what did you study again? So it was like, it didn't really matter,
Exactly.
It was obviously necessary, but still it didn't matter. That it didn't set me apart because everybody has a cool and interesting master. It's not, I think on one hand, it's super good that, every education has become more accessible. So it's not so elitist anymore. In many ways, it still is, but, it's more common to have a high education. But at the same time, it's also become more and more competitive and more international. So you're competing with so many different people from so many different countries. For example, in Germany, when I look at the jobs there that don't have an international focus, that are maybe in politics, and they're like, it would be great if you spoke like English B1, B2 level. And if you had like a knowledge in another additional language, that would be amazing. But the jobs that we're usually applying to is like, I mean, native level English is kind of necessary as a minimum, and then usually it's French or another language. So it's very different. It's very specific.
One job I applied for was it was in Rome, so they said fluent in English, Italian, and French, because then French is a diplomatic language. Knowledge in Spanish and Arabic is preferable, and you're like, I mean, I have all those, and still I didn't even get called. And then afterwards, I found out it was a tailored position. And many times when the job is too good to be true, and like they open a vacancy for a shorter amount of period, that is also because they basically just opened it for someone specific, which is really annoying. And I found out later. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of that. And basically in my core group of friends on my masters were 4 girls. One of them had found a job before the master ended, I think in the second semester, like the last semester of our masters. And the other 2 girls started an internship right after the summer holidays. So I was objectively the only one that wasn't working. So now I'm in a situation where my friends, the ones of the internship, are looking for a job again, and we're sending each other stuff. I mean, to be honest, they're sending stuff to me. I don't know how they managed to find all this stuff. I barely managed to find stuff for myself, and they're like constantly sending links for stuff. So I'm very grateful for that. But I do remember when my friend, the one who was working before all of us, I think after 5 months or something, she was saying, yeah, the job is okay. I mean, it's nothing really incredible, but it's okay. I really don't see myself doing this long term. She told me the same exact thing that your friend said. And it's interesting because now I do have a lot of envy for her, for the choices that she was able to make, or the timing that came for her, even though I know very well that she was the first one that told me, it's not all it's shaped up to be. It's a job, but it's very much a matter of perception. To the outer eye, she was the person that managed to find a job and secure a job before this, before that. And I think that is how I feel right now. It's like, damn, like it would be so cool if I could have just had something. I don't know. I feel like a bit of envy. I feel stupid. I feel like I didn't calculate it the way that I was supposed to do it. But then I speak to so many people that have jobs, because I mean, most of my friends did the bachelor's, then they did the master's, and they immediately, went to the job field. And now they've been working for around 4 years, more or less, and they're miserable. Like it really feels it feels really weird because on one hand you have people who are looking for a job like you are. And on the other hand, you have people who have had a job for a while. Now they're having, long-term contracts and they're getting houses and stuff. But they don't
Mhm.
seem super happy either. Like they're having a different kind of crisis. They're having that
Yeah.
discomfort of, okay, I've been in this job for X amount of years. I don't really like it. Or in general, I just hear people complaining all the time. So I'm like, is this what I'm working towards? So I am uncomfortable and have all the time in the world. And I'm feeling really out of place. So then just be in a job where probably I'm going to be feeling like it really feels like we're not really working towards something that's going to make us happy, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's
Mm.
messes with my head a lot.
I mean, I guess it depends on the job and, on you as well. But I would also say that the upside of having this time to think and reflect, I mean, maybe sometimes a bit more time than is good. But the upside of having this period where you have to get real with yourself and ask yourself, do I really want this? Because
Yeah.
obviously pursuing it is not easy.
Hmm.
So we could obviously go into a different field or something that would be easier where you don't need to have this consistency, where you don't have to have this resilience, I guess. So you could do that. And maybe some people might end up doing things that where it's the safe route, is the route that brings them there quickly. And maybe that's also the most natural route that follows after your degree. But it maybe not be the thing that you really enjoy and that you want to do for a long time. There's also a little bit of a gift in being able to really get clear on what you want and being more certain, because if anything, I have become more certain that this is the right field and this is the right path for me because I'm still interested in it. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're going through that time, you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I would find something, and why is everything taking so long? But you're
Hmm.
still committed. I think that's a good sign, and I think that means that you're doing the right thing, even if it doesn't feel like it at times. Yeah, so who knows? I don't know.
That feels like a good perspective. It also reminds me of what you told me when we met in Florence. You said something along the lines of the fact that we have all this uncertainty, it means that we are privileged enough to be able to choose.
Yes, we have freedom. The uncertainty is tied to the freedom, the generation of our mothers and grandmothers, where it was a much different time. So there is a lot of privilege in being able to choose, and it was not always the case that people wanted to do something, and it still is for a lot of people, not the
Yeah.
case that they're trying to find work for their personal emotional fulfillment.
Mhm.
They do that to have a job and sustain themselves. So I think that's also a privileged perspective in that sense, that we want to find something that makes us happy and that we kind of derive a sense of purpose from. So yeah, it's something that we would like to do.
Mhm.
And it can be tough, but it means that we have the freedom and that we have the ability to pursue that, which not everybody has the luxury of doing.
Mhm. No, I think it's very important to mention, yeah, that we are very privileged to be in this position in the first place, to afford the time to be able to actually look for a job. Because as I said, it
Mm.
is so time consuming. And I know myself, had I found something immediately outside of the master's, I would never look for a job. Had I found like temporary fix, just knowing myself character wise, I would have never been able to do two things at once. It's just not the way
Mm.
that I operate. So I am also, on the one hand, glad that I did have the time to actually really go through it and look through it and be like, oh, okay, actually, it doesn't really work this way. It works that way. I never found myself in this situation because the last time that I was looking for a job was right after my bachelor's, and I had even less I could aim for with just a bachelor's and really objectively no work experience. So I, at the point, was just emailing all the NGOs in Rome and just saying, "This is my CV. I would like to work." And it didn't. I think I managed to get one interview, and I think I must have contacted around 80 organizations. But anyways, and then I found the internship, and that's that. With this phase, I definitely am getting more and more clear on what I would like. I'm learning a bit more. There are definitely some upsides. And as you said, it's an example in patience, it's an example in perseverance. And I feel the same way that you feel. Like I know 100% that I want to do this. Like I want to be in
Yeah.
this field. It's just, it's more like, does the field want me? This is what it's like. I'm
Yeah.
trying to explore at month 6 of this experience. I'm trying to explore what are the possible options because I can't objectively continue this anymore. I am getting a bit of a glimmer of hope now that I have organizations that are finally getting back to me. It's nothing that I'm really excited about, but at least it's something, like at least something is moving.
Yeah.
I am trying to understand what is going to be the next steps from here on out. I think this interview is happening at a week where I'm particularly in this floaty vibe of, okay, everything is meant to be. Timing works. And this is not where I was in my headspace a month ago. And let me tell you that. Not even
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, probably, but this is where I wanted to get. Like, how are you coping? And yeah, what are the things in your day to day that are helping you smooth in this smooth transition, but also allowing you to be present in this moment? Because I feel like a hard thing that I'm having is, oh my God, I will look back at this and it will be a blip in the time. 6 months will be nothing in the future. So I try to remember that. It's like, if anything is going to be 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, it is nothing compared to the rest of my working life. I really want to train myself to be more present. So what are the things that you do? I mean, now there's also this move to Florence, but what are the things that you're doing to keep yourself entertained, to keep yourself present in this moment?
I would say on one hand, it's like, I think it's finding the right balance between long-term planning and also, yeah, like you said, being in the moment, being present. I've tried to kind of write a little bit about where I would see myself in like 5 years. What do I want to do? Like, what do I want to have learned? Mostly from a professional perspective, but of course you can also, get more personal in this. So really think about, where do you want to be, and what do you think that you need to do now in order to get there? And yes, of course, you need to find a job in order to get there, but maybe there's other things you can do that might move you closer to that. So I, for example, did an online course in project management because I felt that a lot of positions really require that, where you have some project management experience. Then I did another course on risk management. So I really try to do something productive that's not like completely taking over my time, but is, an activity or something that I can do on the side that is, giving me a little bit of a structure and a little bit of a different goal as well, where, then I can put that on my CV and I can show that I did something during that time. Also, of course, now that I'm in Florence, I've always wanted to learn Italian. So that's kind of my purely pleasure activity that I do right now, where I do an Italian course. But yeah, other than that, I think continuing to do the things that you enjoy and reading about the things that you're interested in. And, usually there's an overlap with like your personal life and maybe the things you want to do professionally. So yeah, I try to, I don't know, read books that I really didn't have time for when I was doing my master's, do all the things, that I felt like I didn't have time when I was so focused on studying. Also, I did a lot of like organizing. My childhood room, I like got rid of so many things. I donated things. I kind of try to keep track of, I don't know, like insurances that I have, or maybe think about what pension system are you in? Like, I don't know. I mean, for some people that stresses them, but I think for me, it's a really helpful way of doing something productive where I feel like I'm preparing for the future. I'm taking concrete steps to do something that I would have to do at some point anyways. I don't want to be completely overwhelmed with everything that's going to come at me once that time comes. So that's also what's been helping me to not feel like, I'm completely wasting my time, because that's not true. And yeah, if of course, you can only send so many applications in a day, so you might as well do the things again that, that bring you joy, that make you happy, that you didn't have a lot of time for. So I would say that now is the time to really explore that, and also enjoy a little bit that there's some space, because I really haven't had that for a long time. And of course it can feel very uncertain. For me, I've always spent a lot of time by myself, and I've always really enjoyed my own company, and I've always liked to do things. Like, I never get bored, really. It depends on what type of person you are, if you need to be around people, or if you really need like rigid or like a stronger social structure or network that you can be a part of. But I mean, even if you need that, you know, you could find different ways to find a community like you talked about as well, where you do some volunteering or something like that. I would say that really helps. And, you know, yoga and meditation and getting like proper sleep, having a proper routine as
Yeah.
well. Like, don't stay
Yeah.
up. Yeah, just take care of yourself.
I did that definitely the first months of this. I was waking up late and just taking it very, very chill. And then around mid October, end of October, I was like, okay, fuck it. And also for me, it was a weird moment because I actually had my graduation ceremony at the end of October and I wrote my thesis
Mm.
in May. So there was this in between period of looking for a job and not finding it. So it was wild to do a graduation ceremony where they're saying, you know, you're starting the rest of your lives and the future. And you're like, bitch, I haven't found anything. You lied to me. I really had. I mean, I still definitely do carry a lot of resentment. Now it's sort of moving a bit because, again, I can't control it. This is what I chose to do. I think it makes no sense to sort of be in this constant thinking about what I should have done differently. I think I would have done a master's at some point, anyways. I think I am a bit irritated because I was led to believe that it was essential, basically. And now that I'm applying for jobs, sometimes they don't even
Mm.
mention a master's. They want 5 years experience. And you're like, okay, why did
Hmm.
I even do this, honestly? So right now I'm
Yeah.
in that phase where a master's is a multi-level marketing scheme. This is where I'm at. Maybe in the future I will have more compassion towards it, but right now I'm like, okay, I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that later, but
Yeah.
definitely not how do you say, stoked about it because I really thought, okay, this is my entry point into a job automatically. And those things are not interlinked, or at least they're not interlinked anymore. Because definitely when I was looking for a job during my bachelor's, a master's was very much required. But probably now there's like a saturation of that as well. So they're going back to no, but actually we want 10 years of experience for an internship. I'm not really sure. But the thing of the parents is interesting because I've been living with my parents for 6 months now, and I had not been living here since basically beginning of 2020. And I do think very often, am I okay? Like, am I managing to do this because I'm living at home or in spite of living at home? I'm not really sure because I'm so used to not living at home that it gives you that sort of push to do stuff because you need to literally depend on yourself to
Mm.
survive. Instead, right now, I'm in this cozy moment where I get to be at home, and I've never had as little FOMO as I have right now. Like, I could not give a shit about going out and partying and meeting friends. And I think also, as you said, you have 2 very intense years with your masters and then it ends. And I think your body needs a second to sort of recover after
Yeah.
everything that has happened. But it is a very interesting moment to be able to put in focus what you want to do. I definitely had a lot of
Yeah.
bad moments because I was thinking, it really felt like every week I was coming up with new ideas of like, okay, this is gonna be a new job search week. And I'm gonna start looking for jobs. And then you don't find them. And then by midweek, I was getting rejections. And then like clockwork on Friday, I would cry because it would be
Mm.
the weekend coming up, which meant that I was supposed to meet with people. And then it would be the constant, so what do you do? And what do you do? And then you have to explain
Yeah.
that you don't have anything that you're doing, and then it would just make me sad. So that has definitely brought me to a point where I'm just not reaching out to people. People reach out to me. If I get invited, I will go, but I just am not in a phase where I can reach out to people. I just don't manage. Like, and it's okay. You know, like sometimes you're at a point where you really need to do what you can to cope. And given that I would rather not cry more than I already have to during the day, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, you know? But I do think,
Yeah.
I do wonder how it would be if I were not at home, if maybe I have more of a safe space, but at the same time, I'm not really forced to make things happen as you do when you're living abroad. For the other things, yes, again, there was moments where I was holding on to meditation for dear life, running, trying to have some sort of a structure. I started volunteering with 2 organizations because there was this moment around Christmas time. I mean, Christmas, besides that, Christmas was hard. Like the holidays this year was really, really rough because I think it's also because I was already at home. Usually I'm the one who's abroad and then I go home and then I have two
Yeah.
weeks and I meet all my friends. And this time it was the
Mm.
first time that I was basically the only one left at home. All my best friends were coming back for the holidays. And, you have so many people asking, so what's up with you? What's up with you? And then you have your friends telling you how their life is going. And you realize that people are having fully fledged lives going on, and you're living in this weird dimension and you feel like you're just on a different, I don't know, you're on a different wavelength, you're on a different everything. Like, I think the most painful part of all of this is the loneliness, which I've experienced in different ways, even during my master's. Like, I felt that I couldn't really relate to a lot of people, or I've been feeling this since COVID. I really am yearning to find my tribe of people that feel the same way that I do, that have the same goals, that we can talk big things, but also be stupid together. Like, I've had a hard time finding a community of people. I'm very good with
Yeah.
individual friendships. Like, I have so many I can count on. But in terms of groups, I think I'm reeling off of the expectation that the master's was going to give me my group of people, because
Yeah.
logically I thought we're studying the same thing, aka we are like-minded people, which was not the case. Um, and it's hard then, in that sense, finding people that you can relate to in your day-to-day things. And then on top of that, you're just doing something completely different. You have no one else in the same situation that you are right now. And it's such a unique kind of loneliness. It feels really debilitating in a sense, because you really feel that you can't do anything to fix it because it's completely out of your control. And then you have a lot of resentment and rage because you're like, I could be doing things. I'm so ready. If anything, this time has really gotten me to a point where I could start something tomorrow. I have never been someone who loved working, but I could literally start working tomorrow. I am so mentally prepared for this. So I guess now we're just waiting for the opportunity to align with my preparedness. But I don't know how
Yeah.
Christmas was for you, but for me, Christmas was definitely like a hard moment. And everyone always says like the holidays are rough, and I never really understood what that meant. And then this Christmas was like, I just want to get over all these interactions as soon as possible. I don't have any more people asking me, so what's up with you? How's it going? So I don't know. Yeah, definitely I think a lot more compassion for it. And I'm just very glad that I will know how to approach this when I will not be in this situation, but I will meet someone that will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a different experience when you're always used to traveling and going somewhere and living
Yeah.
abroad and doing things. And then always coming back and being always the one to kind of, tell your stories and share your experiences. And when you're in the job search, you don't really experience so much. You experience a lot internally, but there's not so much outside influence. I
Yeah.
mean, you can connect to the world through the internet and through your friends, and you can keep track of things that are happening around the world. But in general, you don't have concrete experiences that you could talk about. And I've had this a few times where I was like, I don't know what to say right now to people that I usually talk to and have a lot to,
Yeah. I have nothing to say. Yeah.
there's a certain, it sounds so depressing, but there's a certain emptiness. I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. It's
Oh,
just, I think that I'm
100%.
used to
100%.
having like this kind of life that is super filled with so many different things, with like friends and work and studies and traveling and so many different things. And it always feels like there's not enough time for everything. I mean, I kind of still feel that even now. So when you speak to somebody, you meet somebody maybe that you haven't seen in a while, and they ask you about your life, then it's like a nice break from everything where you kind of get to share and kind of reflect. But I think when you're in the phase that we're in right now, you're reflecting all the time, and you yearn to do something, you yearn to have something to go to where you bring your passion, and then you can go back home, and sharing something
Yeah.
is very different if you don't have that and you're in the waiting period of your life.
Yeah, especially when the waiting period, you do not know how long it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I think other times we've definitely been through other waiting periods in general, but it's just not knowing when it will end, which makes it really complicated. And yeah, I've been through that so much where people always ask me, so what's up with you? And I know that they want to do it because they care about me and they want to check in on me and they know,
Yeah.
know how I am character wise. So I tend to close myself off very easily when I'm in these moments. But it's just like, like, I'm not saying it because I'm trying to be dramatic. Like, I literally have nothing to tell you. And then they're like, no, you're doing stuff, you're telling me. But I don't know, everything just seems so sort of like pitiful and desperate when I try to say like my little wins for the day, which for me are like big wins, but then they just sound so weird when you say them out loud. I don't know how to explain, especially when we're in a phase where people are really in this go 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 moment, and I've been in that go go
Yeah.
go moment. And to be
Yeah.
honest, I didn't like that. I don't like that sense of overwhelm where you have no control over the day, where you're working for the morning and then you come back and then you like fall to sleep before you even have dinner because you're so tired.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a full moment, and I'm sure we're gonna have that because there's no way to know, but I'm pretty certain that when I will find something, everything will just move 1,000 miles an hour. Like right now, I'm feeling
Yeah.
like I am being pushed back in one of those catapult thingies. And then at some point, it will just let free and I will just jump 1,000 miles an hour. Like that's how I feel
Mm.
it's going to end up for me. It's always been like that. But you have these in between moments, which are not very in between because they're bringing up big chunks of time at this point, and you don't really know how to identify yourself, as you said. When I was abroad, nobody really cared as much or was as inquisitive because I was abroad. So that already is an identification of yourself because you are still, quote
Mm.
unquote, doing something because you are abroad. So, of course, you have a lot of things going on in your life. And I guess it invites less questions than it's inviting now. For example, that I'm at a point where I'm living in Rome. I haven't lived in Rome in years, and I don't know. It is very destabilizing because of that. Ironically, even though it's the most stable I've been because I am at home, so I don't really have anything to
Yeah.
worry about. So it's just so random. Like you don't know how to explain yourself. You don't know how to identify yourself. If
Mm.
you say unemployed jokingly, it's still a bit like self-deprecating in a sense. I have a really big
Yeah.
scarcity mindset because I mean, a job is pretty much conducive to anything. Like people will say that money doesn't bring
Mm.
happiness, but I mean, it will make you feel at least financially okay for a bit. And right now I'm at a point where I just
Yeah.
cannot afford to do things. So that already
Mm.
limits me from a lot of things. And it makes me uncomfortable because I have like friends on holiday and they tell me, come visit me here, visit me there. But I don't want to be in a situation where I have to say looking at my bank accounts every second to get a drink or to do something. So right now I'm just trying
Mm.
to live for the week to week. I get money from tutoring, I use that, and that's pretty much it. But I just accepted that it's not a phase in my life where I can even think about savings. It's just right
Mm.
now I need to cope the way that I can, and then we'll see where we can get on from that. But I mean, I think it's important to put all those things into account because there's so much more behind the scenes, but it's also really uncomfortable to have to recount that all the time. And I hate
Yeah.
that I end up being stuck in this negative loop. I sort of laid out all the uncomfortable and sad feelings about it. I'm aiming to work towards a mental state in which I can be, and I definitely am, that I can be outwardly happy for my friends, for their achievements, that I can reach out to people without it making me feel uncomfortable, that I'm that sensitive that I really do not know what's going to tip me off. Like many times,
Mm.
especially in recent weeks, I have been experiencing times where I say what I'm going through and I'm saying what I'm feeling and I'm saying what I'm doing to cope with it, that I'm a bit more laid back, that I'm a bit more at home. And I do have these moments where people are like, yeah, but you should get out there, you should do this, that. And I really think it's important to underline that different people have different personalities and different things will work with them.
Yeah.
Because I definitely did that a bit more in the beginning, but I generally cannot be in big environments where it's only small talk and the small talk is, so what do you do? Like, that's the first thing that someone would ask you. We are valued on our productivity, we are valued on what role we have in society. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. This experience has definitely given me a lot more perspective in that sense. Like, I want to be more conscious about that going on because there are these transitional periods, and I really wish they could be a bit more vocal and a bit more normalized. Like right now, the way that I see myself, I imagine being at low point But low points can even be a comfortable thing. You know, sometimes you reach these very high peaks of achievements and everything is amazing, but everything is 1,000 miles an hour, and that cannot be sustainable either. And right now, I'm
Yeah.
low point, and I imagine being like, I don't know, I have this visual image of like being like a little sloth. You're in your cozy apartment and there's nice music and you watch series and everything is cozy, everything is calm, everything is like low light, everything is comfortable. And this is just where I am right now. So I wish it would become like a thing in conversation would be like, where are you at right now? I'm at low point. And I'm
Mm.
like, okay.
Well, I think of course, it's good to have, a positive outlook on things, but I think it's also important to acknowledge when you are going through a very tough time.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is the phase that we don't want to be in forever, right? So it's
Yeah.
natural that it's not comfortable, it's not where you want to be. So yeah, it is certainly a stressor. So yeah, I understand that. But I also wanted to say that I think it's a little bit like we always go through these phases where we're kind of feeling like we're peaking and then we're kind of back at being a beginner. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know, when you're in kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
you think everybody who's in the first grade is like this cool person who like knows everything and is so
Yeah.
big and so like you wish you were like that. And then once you're in first grade, you realize that, oh my gosh, everybody in the fourth grade is like so much cooler. And suddenly you're back at square one. Suddenly you're a beginner. Suddenly you're like the small one, the little one, right? So I think I mean, that's how it feels when you when you finish high school, you think, oh my God, I'm on top of the world. And
Mm-hmm.
then you go to university and you're so small again. And then you finish your bachelor's and you think you're on top of the world. And then you begin your master's and you have no clue again. And then you that's how it continues. And then of
Yeah.
course you kind of peak. So most people peak, in terms of their academic careers at their master's degree. So that's when you're kind of at the height, when you think you've learned so much, you did so much, you achieved so much, and then you're thrown into the unknown and you're starting the job search and you're nobody
Mm-hmm.
yet. So I think it's really important to kind of keep that in mind that it's like a natural up and down. So there's going to be a time again where we're going to feel like super on top of the world, and then we're going to be in a situation where it's all new to us and we have to relearn everything. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little bit just like the just life.
Yeah.
And I think it's helpful to identify the phase that you're in, but not attached to it, and also know that it's going to pass and you're going to be in a different phase and things are going to get better, and then you're going to have new problems.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, like the peak of a mountain is literally the bottom of another mountain. And then
Yeah.
once we're gonna have the jobs, it's all gonna be like, oh my God, but now you have this whole new set of challenges that you have to do.
Yeah.
So our aim is this goal, this seemingly impossible goal for whatever reason is to find a job. And then once we're gonna have the job, it's going to be a whole new set of, oh, okay, but I have all this new stuff. But I really do feel that this time has allowed me to prepare for it. Like, I really want
Yeah.
to be in a situation where I have new challenges and where I can grow, because I think the thing that hurts most is it's wasted time, but it's not really my choice to waste it. If I choose to waste it, I'm very happy with it. I love wasting time.
Yeah.
I'm a professional at wasting time, but now it's just getting a bit too much. Like, I really feel that it could be so much time that I could give as part of a workforce, and for whatever reason I'm
Mm.
not being accepted into the workforce. And it is a bit of a mind fuck, because in the beginning definitely I was like, okay, but like this job I'm not really convinced, and this other one I don't know much about it, or it's not really my thing. And right now I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum, where I'm applying to literally anything that is remotely, in my field. And it's just like there must be an in between. Like, I don't like feeling that I do not have value, because I logically know that I
Mm.
do, but it's like the world around me right now is not giving me that stimulation that confirms my thesis, if that makes sense. That I'm always in a
Mhm.
desperation moment, that I'm always the one reaching out to people, and people forget, because people just tend to forget, that they've been in that situation as well. And so it really feels like it's a constant, desperate energy of like, I am reliant on something outside of myself in order to achieve what I
Yeah.
want and what I need. And that is like something I'm very, very happy to get over with. But yeah, this is the exercise in patience is definitely in this moment, understanding that there are so many factors that go into it, and a lot of, it ultimately it has to be a matter of luck. And sometimes the timing is a bit different. And also the fact that we're 27. I think until you do your bachelor's, everyone is more or less the same age. And then from this stage onwards, everyone is doing this at a different time frame. So you don't have the
Yeah,
experience of the collective that says, okay,
that's true.
compared to the rest of my peers, I am here, I am there. Like no one is in a same place anymore. Everyone is just doing. I have people who are married with kids. I have people who are backpacking
Yeah.
in South America. Like there's no in
Hmm.
between of that, and I think that's very interesting. But yeah, now that we've gotten that a bit out of the way, which I think it's important to mention because it is a struggle, definitely. What do you think are like the biggest upsides that you're going to take away from this experience? What are the things that you're really enjoying right now that you will remember fondly in the future?
I think having the freedom to choose, how I spend my day. Of course, on one hand, I'm sending applications, I'm trying to be productive, and yeah, that also feels good. Of course, it doesn't feel good to wait and not get a response, but generally, it feels good to see some progress as well. Like with every application, I feel like I'm more confident. I'm getting a little bit better at writing, expressing myself, and also being more clear on what experiences I have, what qualifications I have. Yeah, I think you get to know yourself a lot through this process. And you also learn to sell yourself a little bit better because that's basically what you're doing all day long. So
Yeah.
I think that's also valuable. Now I have the time to go to yoga classes in the morning and structure my day the way that I want it, and also have a lot of time to have like stillness.
Mm.
I don't know, for some reason, I didn't crave that as much during my master's because I always wanted to like distract myself with like a movie or like a podcast or something because I needed like different input. But right now, I'm really enjoying just being with my thoughts and just having some quiet time. And yeah, just a lot of time for introspection and just generally thinking about not only the job that I want, but also the life that I want. Like, where do I want to live? What do I want to spend my day with? Like, what hobbies do I want to have? What sort of community do I want? Because it's also something that, like you touched upon, that I've been struggling with, where I always like traveling and like living in different places. But then, of course, you also end up with a lot of friends all over the place, but no community in one place, right? So
Yeah.
you kind of know a lot of people in every city, but you don't have this security net around you necessarily. So then it also becomes a matter of, yeah, where do I want to go? And do I even see myself in like a certain city or yeah, so I think just kind of using the time to question myself and think about what I want and yeah, trying to be more open and more, I mean, it sounds silly, but going with the flow
Hmm.
because I I don't have a choice, right? So it's been very interesting. So even though I thought, oh my God, I'm just going to sit at home, write applications, and it's going to be a little bit boring. And yes, and maybe in different ways, life is a bit more boring now
Hmm.
or more monotonous in a way. But at the same time, in some ways, I feel more content, ironically, because I just don't expect so much, I have like a very short checklist, I would say, every day. I have my applications that I want to send. I have, the workouts or the yoga or whatever I want to do. I want to go for a walk. I want to read. I want to meditate. I want to cook. But other than that, there's not such a big to-do list, other than the things that I really want to do and that I feel that are important for me to do. So that's been really nice. And I think from that, actually, I've been more creative. Like I've gone back into painting and just like feeling more creative. So I think that was actually the result of having some space for your thoughts and for yeah, just kind of being a little bit in the moment.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I had never thought about it that way. It's true, like it's a period in time that actually doesn't require much of you. But I think where I have been lacking is that I've been putting so much pressure on myself that I never really allowed myself to see it that way, because I guess I always see it on the outside perspective of what am I going to tell? Like, I don't want to have these conversations. I don't know how to present myself. I don't know how to sell myself. So I guess I've been seeing it a bit more in that sense. I've always loved being on my own. It's always been, I think my natural default is always being way more comfortable on my own than I am with other people. So this phase of life, it's just really nice not to have that sense of, oh God, I need to be doing all these things. Because I like the master, to be honest, like it really drained me in that sense, feeling that I don't know how party your masters was, but it was just always this constant big groups all together all the time, doing everything together. My energy was so dispersed around other people if I was part of groups, and I wanted to find my group of people, but I wasn't finding it. But then I didn't even feel that these were my people in the first place, but I still wanted to be accepted. Like it felt a bit high schoolish now. And
Oh yeah, for sure.
be honest, I mean, we can do an episode on the masters specifically, maybe further on. I have other stuff I need to catch up on, but I think I'm feeling so much of this pressure of what should I have accomplished by 27? I'm already 6 months in 27. Have I done enough? What am I going to report back? We're almost 30. Like I am full in this crisis of questioning every choice I've done basically since COVID onwards. And it's weird, and I think it's super normal, but now I feel like all those emotions have a bit caught up with me all at once. But now I have the time to live all of them out. Like I don't mind those sad moments. I genuinely like feeling emotions deeply. Like it doesn't bother me. I guess I find it a bit destabilizing only when in comparison I feel more low moments than I feel high moments. That's where I'm a bit like, okay, we need to find ways to reframe our thinking and to know how to be around people and in what way we choose to be around people. But it's nice, yes, to have a moment where you can be a bit more to yourself and really, like, I don't think I've ever been clearer on who I am as a person, what I want to do, who I want to be surrounded with, who I want to give my energy to, after 2 years that have definitely dispersed that for me, where maybe I knew how I wanted to live, but just the environment I was in was not conducive to that. So I'm just waiting for the moment that will come, and then I think I'm gonna go really 1,000 miles an hour. And I do have that thing in my head where I'm like, I don't know what's in the in-between moment. I just have mentally the vision of me being like, and then it's over for you bitches. Like, like I have this moment where I can visually be myself being like boss girl sort of thing. I'm just missing those steps in the bit. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I know that it's going to be conducive to that. I just don't know how I'm going to get there. But no, it's interesting and it's nice to reflect on it. Like even the volunteering that I'm doing, I definitely did it more out of a personal necessity. There was a moment where I was doing like a hostess as an event and I couldn't stop crying because I was like, oh my God, like I'm doing the stuff that I was doing during my bachelor's. This feels so demeaning to me, blah, blah, blah. And this friend of my sister's, she was telling me, like just because you're doing this now does not mean that this is who you are. It does not mean that this is your life at this moment. And she went through a similar period and she's like, do other stuff, like be with other people, realize, you're having a tough moment, but please put things into perspective. You're fine. Like there are many other situations where I think you don't have the opportunity to be confronted with other people and other situations that can sort of also put things in perspective for you. So I definitely went into it out of like a proper need to be confronted with different realities. But now I'm grateful that I'm doing things that at least are getting me a bit out of my head. There definitely needs to be a certain amount of me, at least for me personally, forcing myself to be out, because I could really easily be 1 week at home and not realize. Unfortunately, that's like one of my things. But again, I think I also know mentally that when it's go time, it will be go time. So maybe I'm just trying to live it that way. I don't know. I really, it's just such a weird point in time that I guess compared to even like my siblings that are older than me, maybe I didn't perceive that it was hard for them, or maybe their trajectories of life were much more linear and I just happened to choose something more complicated. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like nobody really has given me some sort of pep talk that was like, oh, okay. Like only my friend that basically did the same thing that I did. She was like, listen, I've been through it as well. At this point, just surround yourself with the people that you really want to surround yourself with. That's the energy that you have. Use that wisely. That's it. I'm like, yeah, fair. Because I think there's a lot of that messaging that because we are young and because, it's our 20s, we're supposed to be living it up all the time, all the time, all the time. And so then when you're in a moment where you can't for different reasons, I guess it's an added pressure and it's an added guilt of like, am I doing things wrong? Although even if you know that you don't want to be doing those things, like it's just so messed up.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so annoying. I hate the comparison thing. I can't wait to be older. Like I'm really honestly, I can't wait for my 30s because I will have solved all this emotional dump now. So then I think that then the 30s are just gonna be much better than that. But yeah.
I can relate to that when you're, comfortable by yourself and when you're also, at least for me, I always felt like a little bit like, I don't know, I've always had friends, but I also never really felt so connected to groups of people.
Yeah.
Not so interested in becoming like part of a clique or something like that. And
Yeah.
I felt like my master's was quite cliquey.
Yeah.
And there was like some, where there was some overlap with, friends and groups of friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, do things in a group, but it was not this kind of clear set of people that would only hang out together or that would be like, this core friend group.
Mm-hmm.
So but other people then had that, and I was wondering, like, am I doing something wrong? Like, should I, should I do it like that? But it just never really happened for me, and I'm also okay with that because I think I really enjoy meeting, I don't know, occasionally, meeting with more friends at a time, but also having one-on-one time with friends and
Mm-hmm.
having a little bit more time to speak honestly and openly about things. I think in a group you can also do that, but it's a little bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah.
But also it helps to actually notice that in yourself or get to know yourself where you're like, no, I'm not that type of person who's going to hang out in groups of people. And I'm okay with that,
Yeah.
you don't have to. I guess it just sometimes feels like you should be doing something differently.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
like you said, you need to know where you get your energy from. And I also get that from being by myself, doing the things that I enjoy. And then, yeah, with, my very close friends or with my partner, then of course, that's also where I'm getting energy from. But other than that, I'm also very picky with who I spend my time with. And especially
Yeah.
in a time like right now where everything is a bit more fragile, where you feel more sensitive and where you don't want anybody to have access to like, your life. And also I think that's a little bit that can be difficult with social media, for example, with, people share a lot what is going on in their lives and everybody knows. And I think sometimes it's also good to keep, things to yourself. And once they're kind of ripe to,
Mm-hmm.
to talk about, then you can talk about them and share them with others. But that's also something that I learned through this time that you don't need to always connect in that way with everybody. Like you don't need to share everything all the time. You can also, yeah, you can keep things to yourself, not in order to keep them secret, but more to be mindful and not feel like everybody has access and has an opinion on what you're doing.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah, and I think yeah, I mean definitely that's a whole thing that I definitely want to talk about. But I feel exactly the same way. Like I do think it's really important to sit with your feelings, but also let them ferment. I always use that term. For me, it's like let things happen. Like you can't really force it. And then when it's going to get to the
Yeah.
right point, it's gonna get to the right point. Like even with this call, basically, we were supposed to do it what was it last week? Like, but I definitely like last week I was literally crying every single day. And this week I just have a bit more pep in my step just because things are happening a little bit more. And maybe this is where I was supposed to be right now. I was supposed to do this today and I was supposed to do it last day. I'm supposed to find a job in 2 months and I wasn't supposed to do it 4 months ago. Like there's no way of knowing where you're at. So now that we're heading towards the end of this episode, I think it would be nice to end it on a good note, but like a more practical
Yes.
note. Would you have any recommendations, not to your younger self, but if there's someone who's listening right now who's going through the same thing that we're going through, but they're at the beginning of it, they're like, no, it's fine, I will
Yeah.
find something. There's any practical recommendation that you would share with them, knowing what you know now?
Well, first, of course, get a spreadsheet, really get an overview of the things that you want to apply to. You can make it very easy, have a link. So I have like two different sheets in my spreadsheet. So I have one where I, have all my applications that are listed that I want to apply to in the next weeks and months, sometimes when when they do it really far in advance. Have the link, have the city, have the employer, the position, and when it's due. And then I can kind of plan that in my calendar. When should I apply for something? How much time do I need? So yeah, I can really make sure that I don't miss any important deadlines. But then I also have a second sheet where I listed and made a little bit of a list. It's not complete yet, but I made a list of the organizations and institutions that I would like to apply to or that could be interesting that don't have any jobs right now, but I basically collect them and then I put the opportunities link. So basically the link to their career opportunity website. So then you can kind of go through this, you can build your own little chart and then you can I don't know, once a month, once a week, however often you want to check it, go through and see if there's any new opportunities, because that's one of the biggest obstacles, I would say, of finding the right jobs, So whenever you see like an interesting organization or an interesting job, and even if it's not the right job for you, make note of their organization, write it down, save their links so you can come back to it later and you can see if they have anything else. I would say, it also depends on what field you're in, but assuming that you're also in international affairs or this kind of broader field, I would say make sure that you have like a well-kept LinkedIn page. So that's very updated. And because I find that, at least for my interviews, they always check my LinkedIn. So I saw that somebody from the organization looked at it and they looked before they invited me. So I take it that, that was a positive. So I think if you make a good impression there, have like a friendly picture so they can get an impression, because I don't use a picture on my CV, but they're going to Google you anyway. So you might as well leave a good impression there. And then I would say, yeah, use your network. If you don't have a super substantial network, then, do what you can. You can always reach out to people and ask for their advice. Or, that's also the thing, people they love to talk about themselves. So
yeah,
if they're in a position where you're like, oh, this is interesting. Even people, I don't know, that are like 50 or older, and you could ask them, how did you get there? Like, what was your path? What would you advise me? And then, of course, you'll be in their minds when something comes up, and you never know. Of course, you need to apply to everything, but it's already like a little bit of a foot in the door. So I would always make sure that the right people know what you're looking for. I also made like a little post when I got my master's degree that I'm, interested in these opportunities and that I would appreciate advice or heads up if there's anything. And generally, that is also my impression that former colleagues have been very helpful. They told me, like, if you need anything, let me know. Also, make sure that you have, that's actually important, that you have like your folder on your computer or whatever saved to your cloud, wherever you want to keep that, where you have everything in order. So I made like a folder with applications, and then I call this my toolbox. So it's basically all of the different categories. So I have a folder with my certificates, folder with like cover letters where I can, letters that I wrote before, so I can have the formatting, but I can also, see what I wrote before and then just change it a little bit. So you have like a core paragraph that you kind of reuse always a little bit differently and tailor it. I have my CVs, my diplomas and transcripts, my passport documents if you need that, then pictures of myself. Sometimes they want you to upload a picture of yourself. Then I have my references. I also have like writing excerpts like from my theses. So basically, whenever there's an application, I make a new folder and then I can copy just everything that I need for that specific application. I have it like right on hand. I don't need to search for a long time. And definitely keep an archive of what you apply to, so you can, get inspiration from what you wrote, and you don't have to do everything, from scratch again. You can adjust it. So that also saves time. Also have maybe like a weekly goal or something of the number of applications you want to send. That of course can vary, but because that's kind of the internal driver, I think you need to have like an internal motivation that keeps you going, because you don't have that external validation, right? You usually don't get so many responses. It's just very rare that you get something back, so you really need to keep yourself going. So I have like little notebooks on top of having my spreadsheet. I wrote just like with my pen. I just wrote down every application that I send, just for myself. It doesn't do anything. It just helps me feel like accomplished, feel like where I can actually, put a check next to it when I apply. Just things like that. Just do something that motivates you, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I would say definitely the Excel spreadsheet is invaluable. Like you need that. Like I think it's the easiest thing to keep track of, and just knowing what you're doing in your day to day, and everything that you said about the folders and keeping everything on track. I have honestly the same CV. Like I don't tailor my CV honestly just because I don't have enough experience. Like that's all I have, and so I can't end up sending that one. But I do have a cover letter that is communications based and another one that's operational based. So just like the easiest thing, and then you just change what you need to change. I would say definitely if you're still in your master's, just start creating these folders and doing these things now. So then when you start looking for it, it's going to be a much smoother process. In terms of networking, I tried doing it myself as well, but I think probably I was reaching out to people that were a bit more entry level. So they gave me advice, but nothing incredible. Like I had a few calls, but if you just look for what is your thing of interest, I think it would be much more useful if you apply for something, you know that they're the recruiter or they work there, and you have like a valid reason, quote unquote, to email them and to ask for actual advice. But it hasn't happened to me yet, so I can't give feedback on that yet. And I would just say generally keep like little goals throughout the day and throughout the week, and make sure to dedicate time to do it, but also know how and when to get off. Like I don't do this at night. Dedicate time to art and just doing things that you wouldn't usually do. Like I did all my medical checks now, which I had been postponing, and I think that has been contributing to my anxiety lately because I just didn't want to know something else. But now I did them all in a week. I got them all out of the way, and I feel already much better. And I would have never had time to schedule them had I been working. So, it's like, just even for the tedious stuff, just use it as an excuse to
go to the dentist.
Exactly. I did my cleaning last week. So do all your checkups, do all the things that you've been postponing, like do the tedious stuff. Just use it as a moment to be able to do the stuff that you always kept saying, I need to do it, I need to do it. And then you never do. I think it's a good moment to pause, to reflect, to declutter your space and to declutter your mind. So I don't know, in terms of practical advice, that's what I would like to say. Just try to keep as much as you can some sort of a routine, but also, flexibility and force yourself to do things that are outside of yourself. I think any level of like course or volunteering or running a hobby, it's really annoying when all you have to do is just apply. So definitely things that can break that up throughout the day are useful. And hope that you have people that you can talk to. And if you feel that people are like making you feeling uncomfortable, just say, like I'm not at capacity and I don't want to share more than I can, or I'm not in a space where I want to go out as much. I mean, people are going to be understanding. I've been blessed to have beautiful friends that, in a moment where I have a bit more of a financial situation, I went to visit my friends in Brussels and they were offering things for me, and like they had my back, and I know that in the future I will have the back of someone else, and I cannot wait to pay that forward. So I don't know, it feels a bit debilitating at sometimes, but I think it's also important to know that literally everyone has been through this, and so your friends are happy to be there for you in that moment, and you will be happy to be there for someone else in the future. So I cannot wait to be at this point where people will ask me me for contacts or recommendations. Like I cannot wait to be in a moment where I can be someone of use to somebody else, because right now is just, I feel like we're grasping at straws and we're reaching out to people and we're like, please give me something useful. And I've had so many networking calls that don't end up with anything. They don't tell you anything of value, anything that you don't know already. It's just like, oh, and also I would say, I don't know if you have it, so no judgment towards you, but I ended up taking off my open to work on LinkedIn. I put on the option that only recruiters can see it. Because I don't know, it felt weird.
I did that too, just because it didn't fit well with my profile, like my profile picture, because it was like too far. It was like my face is too close to the edges, so it was like covering my face.
I was like, no, I had the same problem.
So that was purely for vain reasons. But
yeah, I feel like LinkedIn is useful mainly, yes, to see jobs, but it's useful once you have a job, like once you can write to your network and stuff like that. So I don't know, like I don't think if I'm going to find something through LinkedIn per se or through the networks of LinkedIn, but it's good to have it definitely because they do check you out.
And you're going to find jobs. Yeah.
We will have a call in the future. We will do like a sequel of this call and we'll say how great we are and how everything is going, or maybe we will share our new problems and our new aims and our new challenges. But I don't know, this has been really, really nice. I've been so excited to be able to do this with you.
Oh, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
In a very selfish level, to find someone who's kind of like going through the same thing, it's really not as easy right now, but it's been really nice to be able to chat with you about this and to have an open conversation about this. And I really, really hope that if this comes across to anyone who's going through this season of waiting, just that I think I saw a video on that. There was a girl saying, for when I'm in the seasons of waiting, I do think of my future self and that my future self will be missing something that I have right now. And so I try to keep that in mind when I go ahead about the extra time that I have to be with my niece and nephew, the time that I have to spend with my family, you know, things that I can do with myself, with my arts, playing games. I don't know. All of that makes me very, very happy. So yes, good luck to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Hopefully we can be reporting back soon, but I'm really glad that we did it when we're going through it. So
me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to us, and
bye.
See you next time.